Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video. In this week's episode of CN Unit Analysis, we will be featuring Fuxuan, our latest Quantum 5-star Preservation unit. There has been a lot of expectations on Fuxuan, whether she can solo sustain, whether she can enable the Mono Quantum team, and now finally we have an opportunity to test it out for ourselves. And I can say with confidence, as well as after further testing, yes, she's definitely able to do all those things that players expect of her, and even more, right? So without further ado, let's get into today's content. So Fuxuan is our latest 5-star Quantum Preservation unit that seeks to contend with Luocha over the spot of the best sustain in Honkai style. And nowadays, simply sustaining and generating skill points are not enough for a unit to be ahead of the rest of the sustain category, and Fuxuan definitely exceeds those expectations. She is our first unit that offers an almost permanent team-wide damage sharing and damage mitigation with a multitude of buffs ranging from HP percentage, crit rate percentage, and even a crowd control immunity. On top of all these, she has excellent synergy with Silver Wolf by enabling our Mono Quantum team or even the Dual Element team. For team compositions, we will be exploring them a little bit more in depth in a separate video. For this guide, we will aim to unleash Fuxuan's true potential through her most optimal builds, followed by our alternative options. Now for Fuxuan's helpful tips then, there are frankly quite a lot of things to go through over here, and we'll start it off with the fact that Fuxuan needs to build speed. Now Matrix of Presence is tied to Fuxuan's own turns, which is very similar to Luocha's Abyss Flower. And because of this, the concept of Luocha building speed can also be applied to Fuxuan due to the importance of having high ultimate frequency, as well as considering how Fuxuan's field has very long duration of 3 turns. Now after testing, players will rarely, if ever, find the metrics expiring, and Fuxuan will be fast enough to generate skill points and ultimate, which are both crucial to the survivability of herself and the entire team, especially when we consider that Fuxuan's ultimate is one of the only ways to heal unless you get her signature Lightcone. Remember guys, damage mitigation does not have any healing by itself, right? We need to get some heals from Fuxuan, because if not, in a long drawn out battle, if Fuxuan cannot keep up with her ultimate frequency because she's too slow, then we're definitely going to face some issues there. Now another helpful tip is that defense is actually a really decent stat on Fuxuan. Her basic attack, her ultimate damage, even some of her talents, her tracers, they all scale with HP percentage. And we have also established that Fuxuan needs speed so that she can increase her ultimate uptime without relying on getting hit all the time. However, what we should take note of is that defense is also a really great stat on Fuxuan, because the damage you receive from allies via damage distribution can be reduced by defense percentage, as well as rest such as Day 1 Lightcone itself. While Fuxuan might not directly deal more damage with a more defense percentage, since none of her skills actually scale with defense compared to HP, it is however still an excellent stat that prevents Fuxuan from dying due to a very large AoE damage or a single target nuke that can affect Fuxuan. We'll be discussing a little bit further as to what are the scenarios that Fuxuan will actually face survivability issues in her special mechanics section. Now the next tip is that Fuxuan does not generate energy from her damage distribution. So in case you guys think that if our ally gets hit, Fuxuan will generate more energy from ally getting hit, unfortunately that is not how it works. So taking damage from distribution will not give Fuxuan any energy unless the damage is inflicted directly onto Fuxuan, which is to say she is the main target or she is the adjacent targets to an AoE damage. Now number 4, DPS Fuxuan is actually possible with 4-piece Quantum. Now similar to how Blade scales his damage with HP percentage, Fuxuan also has HP percentage scaling on her basic attack and her ultimate. Now Fuxuan with a HP percent and a crit build is definitely viable, with 4-piece Quantum's effect of 20% defense reduction against Quantum enemies being very common, especially when we pair Fuxuan with Silver Wolf. Now we will be going into this entire build more in depth in a future video, but the general consensus are that if players want to try and build this build, it is possible, but for the most part, new players should not try to build this, because Fuxuan without adequate relic investments, with a lot of wasted subs, if you guys try to build her as a 4-piece Quantum with Genius set as well as crit rate main stat, she's probably gonna face very heavy survival issues, right? So you guys definitely need some relic investments, not just for Fuxuan, but for your entire team, so that they can quickly kill the enemy before they kill you. Now for our final helpful tip is that Liuren, which is Fuxuan's A6 trace, affects all crowd controls for that single effect. Now the description of it directly says that all allies will resist all crowd controls applied by the enemy target during the current action. Now although this can be only triggered once, this also means that against abilities like an AoE freeze or an AoE imprison, Liuren can actually cleanse all allies from that one AoE attack. However, this will not be applied if it is two separate single target crowd controls effects. So just something to keep in mind when you want to use Fuxuan against things like Cocolia or even the Automatron robot. And that's all we have for Fuxuan's helpful tips. Now moving on to a character kit being the trace priority, both for Fuxuan's talent and skills are equally important. Now one of it offers damage mitigation and self heals, while the other one offers max HP percentage buff and crit rate buff. And just a little thing to note here, Fuxuan's maximum HP percentage buff scales off of her maximum HP, not her base HP. And that's also why I say stacking HP on Fuxuan is an excellent choice. To put it simply, Fuxuan's talent improves her function as a sustained unit, while improving her skill will improve her function as a support unit, especially when you consider that her skill's damage distribution are fixed. You don't really gain any benefit out of upgrading that, but you do gain a benefit from more maximum HP and more crit rate buff. So that is why both of these abilities, talent and skill, they are equally important for Fuxuan. Now following that, upgrading Fuxuan's ultimate increases overall damage, but that is a secondary priority compared to Fuxuan's talent and skill. Moving on to her 3 ascension traces, both Dunjia and Liuren are important to Fuxuan, with Dunjia granting her the only healing factor via the ultimate, while Liuren grants Fuxuan the only crowd control mitigation too. So they are both extremely important, and there shouldn't be a case where players will opt to skip one over the other. Tai Yi is also useful, but it is not as crucial as the other ascension upgrades. There is a much larger impact on Fuxuan's entire kit. So talking about Fuxuan's special mechanic session, damage distribution as well as damage mitigation. These are by far the most important mechanic in the Fuxuan's entire kit, and this is also what makes Fuxuan such an excellent sustained unit despite not healing as much as the likes of, like, for example, Luo Cha or Bailu or Natasha or even Lynx, right? Fuxuan's damage distribution is excellent for single target nukes, as she will greatly absorb any damage designated for a targeted squishy ally such as Ting Yun, Asta, or even your DPS like Silate. But that being said, this mechanic is not that great for repeated AoE damage since all targets are affected. And speaking of this, there are a few scenarios that Fuxuan will actually fail to sustain because she received too much damage, and honestly there are only 2. The first of which we already have mentioned, is an extremely large or very frequent AoE damage hitting all units, and Fuxuan will keep absorbing the portion of damage from all allies. So if this exceeds, if Fuxuan just keeps absorbing it, and she doesn't have enough talent stacks for her to heal back to 90% HP, then she's definitely going to face some issues there. And this will certainly be an issue if our Fuxuan is too slow or does not have enough energy regeneration. And number 2, Fuxuan will also die if she is unable to trigger her talent until very close to 50% HP, such as 50.1%, which is before her talent can trigger. If Fuxuan receives any damage that is exceeding 50.1% of her effective HP, then Fuxuan will definitely be defeated. So knowing this information, before we go into exactly how much HP or how much defense can we build on Fuxuan, here is a little bit more things, which is her damage mitigation. Now Fuxuan's damage mitigation is multiplicative, right? So this 18% damage reduction from her talent and the Wandering Guard 2-piece effect, they do not mitigate a combined 26% damage, but it is closer to 24%, roughly 24.56. Still, despite all these, it is still a separate multiplier from res and defense, right? If you guys remember the damage formula, for our unit to deal very high amounts of damage, we need attack, we need damage the percentage, we need crit values on top of all the debuffs as well, right? This same principle can also be applied to effective HP, because effective HP also has its own formula, right? It is its HP plus our defense plus our damage reduction. So going too much into defense or HP without going into factors such as damage reduction is not going to be ideal for us, right? So that's why Wandering Guard 2-piece is still a pretty decent option that we will go into a little bit more further later. Now, as you guys can see from this picture here, notice that Fuxuan also have a lot of buffs as a preservation unit, notably Knowledge, which increases our entire team's maximum HP based on Fuxuan's own maximum HP, as well as this crit rate buff. So players with Fuxuan's signature Lightcone at this point of time can also increase our entire team's damage boost from this 9% over here, right? And if you guys want to take it to the next level, her E1 increases our crit damage on knowledge as well, but that's really just for the spending players. Now this is the good part I really want to talk about, which is the recommended amount of health for Fuxuan. CM Bros essentially chalked it up to more than 7,000 HP, but this number does go down with more and more defense percentage or more and more damage reduction. So this is how the math comes about. First of all, this is the damage that will be received by Fuxuan after a Cocolia ultimate. Right, so they tested this out to receive around 5.5k, almost 5.6k after sharing the damage from all the allies. So you guys can see here at 5.6k HP, Fuxuan is going to be nowhere close to dying if she has more than 7,000 HP. But remember that if our Fuxuan is only at 51% HP, which is to say Fuxuan only has 3,500 HP left, then she is probably going to die from this ultimate. So do keep that in mind. Now the reason why we have this 7,000 is because of this working over here. The recommended HP for Fuxuan, it is not to technically prevent Fuxuan from dying, it is more to prevent Fuxuan's teammate from dying. So the example that the CM Bro did here is that Inhibitor Lune with 900 defense as well as all the defense multiplier added up, he will receive roughly 2,832 damage after Fuxuan with a 7,000 HP is paired with this team. So if Fuxuan has any lesser HP than 7,000, then our Inhibitor Lune will be a lot squishier, right? So any damage that exceeds 2,832, our Inhibitor Lune is just going to get one shot. And at this point, this is honestly quite possible, especially in Swarm Disaster. So that's why I say 7,000 HP is roughly the ballpark that players should go for. Now, the CM players are not so concerned with Fuxuan's personal survivability issue because they believe that the odds of players actually reaching like 51% or like 52% HP is really low, considering that Fuxuan's ultimate uptime can be quite frequent, and Fuxuan's ultimate, as we know, heals our entire team, right? So the CM players think the more Fuxuan gets hit, which says she receives a lot of damage and gets closer and closer to a 50% threshold, then the more her energy is going to recharge. And once that energy recharges, she can just instantly cast her ultimate and just heal her back by a specific amount. So there's very little situations where players will ever face themselves for Fuxuan to be in like 51 or 50.1% HP. So that was not really part of the factor for their consideration. What they are concerned with is whether our ally can survive after taking damage with the help of Fuxuan's damage mitigation. Now moving on to Fuxuan's Eidolons, her E1 is roughly equivalent to half a main stat worth of crit damage at 30%. This translates to a roughly 10% increase in damage output for the entire team, especially if they are running crit. So if the players want the extra push to compensate for their poor relics, right, not enough investment in crit damage, then E1 is gonna be a really good Eidolon, because we all know how difficult it can be to farm for good crit ratio relics. Note that while this is for the entire team, the only real benefactor will be our crit ratio DPS, right? For our supports and our other sustains, if you guys want to run 2 sustains with Fuxuan, they really don't care that much about crit damage at all since they don't have any crit rate. So think of it as the only benefactor for our main DPS, or maybe our sub DPS if they're going to be running a crit ratio setup. Now Fuxuan's big Eidolon is going to be her Eidolon 2, Optimus Felix. If any team member is struck by a killing blow while Matrix of Prescience is active, then all allies who are struck will revive with 70% of their max health. Even though this can trigger one time per battle, this is an absolute game changer, which is basically Bailu's revive, but for the entire team when faced with an AoE nuke such as our Deer or Cocolia, right? So this will allow Fuxuan to be extremely comfortable when used in auto battle, as it is very unlikely that the team will ever lose unless they are faced with team building or relic issues. So getting E2 on Fuxuan essentially translates into this team is pretty much gonna always clear the content. It's just a matter of how fast or how slow with a relic investment, but this AoE group revive is super good. Now moving on to Fuxuan's E4, Fortuna Stellaris, it greatly increases Fuxuan energy regeneration, right? Because whenever any allies are attacked under Matrix of Prescience, and as we've mentioned, this matrix will last for a very long time, right? So under her E4 effect, Fuxuan can potentially have a 2-turn ultimate or maybe even 1-turn ultimate cycle if we have a lot of very fast enemies. But this is not really the main focus. The main focus when you get E4 is more so for players who want to get her E6, because if you guys are going to skip her E6, then the E4 value is not that great. Now, why is Fuxuan's E6 so important? This Omnia Vita, it basically fully transforms Fuxuan into a sub DPS, or heck, even a main DPS, by massively increasing Fuxuan's ultimate damage. Combining this E6 with Fuxuan's E4 for a 2-turn ultimate, Fuxuan is pretty much now an erudition plus preservation unit combined, which is kind of similar to how Luocha's E6 transforms Luocha into a nihility plus an abundance character. That being said, even though this sounds very nice, right, Fuxuan dealing tons of damage, but based on current content, there has yet to be any stage where we failed a stage because we lack damage. The leading cause of failed battles in Honkai Star Rail so far, they are usually tied to survivability issues, which if you guys get Fuxuan's E6, it will not really improve survivability issues that much, since this is directly a damage increase. It has nothing to do with decreasing damage taken, it has nothing to do with increasing heal provided for the entire team. So in summary, Fuxuan's E1 is a great team-wide DPS increase, her E2 greatly enhances team-wide survivability, the E4 increases the heal and damage from ultimate frequency, and E6 transforms Fuxuan into a DPS. You can technically play Fuxuan before E6, but E6 really turns into a DPS. Bottom line, none of the Eidolons are super impactful if players can use their Fuxuan to sustain the entire team, right? If you guys can already sustain your entire team with an E0, S0 Fuxuan, then there really is no point pulling her for her Eidolons, because she has already fulfilled her purpose. So pulling her Eidolons will only be on a per need basis. Now moving on to a very important thing, which is energy requirements or energy thresholds, right? You guys can see over here, these are the additional scenarios done by Grimroll, but I've also added a couple more myself over here. Two things to keep in note, which is that Fuxuan's ultimate costs 130, and if we use Fuxuan's skill while the matrix is up, it will refund 50 instead of 30. The thing to note is that Fuxuan's energy threshold scenarios are taken with this absolute cutoffs, meaning she's not getting hit by anything. However, in reality, this is very unlikely, because Fuxuan is, after all, a preservation unit with the highest taunt value in the entire game. So not having a perfect ultimate cycle, as you guys can see here, this scenario she's missing 5 energy, and this scenario she's missing 12 energy, because Fuxuan's ultimate, it costs 130, right? So it's really not that bad, because the odds of Fuxuan getting hit at least once over 3 turns is much higher compared to other units such as your DPS or your support. Another thing to consider is that Fuxuan's ultimate might not always be used every turn unless she's a DPS, right? You want her ultimate to do as much damage as possible. Why I say this is because there will be moments where the team are still at a very healthy threshold, maybe even close to full, so you probably wouldn't want to be using a Fuxuan's ultimate until they actually get hit. In summary, players aiming for a 3-turn ultimate will certainly use an ER rope, while players who are more lenient, right, you guys can rely on Fuxuan getting hit, you guys know that she's gonna get hit, then you guys can just pull for a signature Lightcone, drop the ER rope for even more HP percentage. Or we can just drop Von Weg without using Fuxuan's signature Lightcone. Factoring in Fuxuan's high taunt value, CN players prefer to drop Von Weg. They really don't like to use Von Weg just for more offensive planar sets such as Fleetless and Q. Because at the end of the day, Fleetless and Q, they are consistent, they are guaranteed buffs for your entire team, especially for DPS. Whereas for Von Weg, sometimes its usefulness is there if your Fuxuan completely doesn't get hit, but sometimes, and I would dare say most of the times, Von Weg will not be felt because she is hitting her energy thresholds, irregardless if she has Von Weg or not. Now moving on to Fuxuan's relic sets, and oh boy, this is gonna be a very diversified set of relics for a single unit. The first priority for us is either going to be Longer's Disciple or Passerby. Mixing and matching between these two 2+2, 2-piece Passerby is actually one of Fuxuan's better sets. Why this is the case, it always boils down into opportunity cost, right? Fuxuan can obtain HP percentage and speed from main stats and substats, and the damage reduction is already in Fuxuan's traces, right? She already provides 18% damage reduction. Now, why healing helps Fuxuan is because with slightly more outgoing healing boost, it increases Fuxuan's team-wide heal using her ultimate, as well as a heal from a personal sustain without sacrificing her innate durability like HP, which is once again obtained from the main stat. Note that while this works on Fuxuan's talent, which is restoring Fuxuan back to 90% HP, it will not heal her beyond 100% HP, right? Once you're max HP, you're max HP. You won't get any like extra barrier or whatever kind of stuff. So this is why having too much outgoing healing, such as if you guys actually use like a 43.2% outgoing healing on the chest, this will be counterintuitive. and players should just stick to more HP percentage so that Fuxuan can actually tank more damage without sacrificing too much of a personal as well as team-wide healing. Why Longevous? I think this should be pretty straightforward because this is our only 2-piece or 4-piece that actually provides us with HP percentage, and everything from Fuxuan's kit pretty much scales with HP percentage. So this is very, very straightforward. Now, if players don't have Passerby or Longevous, Guard/Hacker Space are still gonna be an excellent set for Fuxuan. Like I mentioned, she is like a stat stick. She just wants as much damage reduction, as much effective HP as possible. So Guard is definitely gonna fulfill that. And like I said at the start, speed is always gonna be a good stat because more speed means faster turns, means more skill points, means faster ultimate. So speed is always gonna be good, especially if both of them have very, very good sub stats. Like I mentioned just now, Fuxuan is super, super versatile as a sustain as long as she can survive. Right, she can survive Cocolas out, she can survive True Sting, she can survive the General throwing the spears. The set bonuses really doesn't matter that much. It only just makes her a little bit tankier, a little bit more min-maxy, more effective HP, but it's not super, super important. And lastly, our 4-piece Genius. We're not going to be going through here today, we're just going to be going through the conventional build, but just a note to my audience, 4-piece Genius is viable only and only if Fuxuan has really, really good subs, as well as the entire team has really, really good subs to deal very, very high damage or heal for a very high amount. This is to ensure that Fuxuan can still survive without the 2/2 set effects, right? 2/2 over here, we're essentially trading in 10% healing, 12% HP, and 8% damage reduction, as well as 6% speed, just for 4-piece quantum damage. So it will really be quite difficult, especially if the players didn't start farming at all or didn't have any good relics. So I would highly advise players just stick to these 4 relics, preferably Longevous and Passerby, but the rest are fine as well. Now moving on to Fuxuan's planetary set, this is super straightforward. It's either going to be Filios or Kill, right? Best in slot. It will depend on the situation. Kill will be ideal for normal DPS, while Filios will be ideal for DOT DPS. Also note that Kill has 30% effect rest to activate, as well as Kill having 120 speed to activate. We're not recommending Vonwag here because Vonwag doesn't help us hit any threshold. And like I mentioned, the energy threshold section, most CM players do have the intention of letting Fuxuan get hit because at the end of the day, she's a preservation unit, right? So she's probably going to get hit once, which renders Vonwag useless. And at the end of the day, Fuxuan also much rather prefer the HP percentage or the effect rest from Fleetless or Kill respectively. So that is why Fleetless is going to be best in choice. However, if players are going to go for the DPS Fuxuan build, then Sassoto is going to be an excellent choice because it increased crit rate as well as increased ultimate damage. Maybe the follow-up damage not so much, but those 2 other factors are definitely excellent for Fuxuan. Like I mentioned once again, not recommended for new players, especially if Fuxuan is too squishy, or players without her signature Lightcone, which is she already shut her eyes. Why do I say we need a signature Lightcone? We're going to talk about it in this later section of the video. Now, let's first talk about our final relic section, which is the main stats and substats. Speed is the highest priority for Fuxuan, I explained earlier. For Rope, Fuxuan can use HP percentage if she's facing survivability issues, or we can use ER Rope to basically out 1 turn earlier, right? 1 turn earlier out means more damage and more team healing, although you do have less of a maximum health pool for Fuxuan herself. I am not going to be recommending outgoing healing body, right? This is not worth it because HP percentage will be lost at the main stat. This will drastically reduce Fuxuan's overall durability and in the worst case scenario, the team's survivability, right? So in the main stat portion, you can see here, Chest is going to be either HP or crit depending on the route you go. Boots is always going to be speed. Rope is going to be HP or ER depending on what Lightcone you went for. Sphere is always going to be HP percentage quantum damage. And I really would not recommend quantum damage unless you're absolutely sure Fuxuan will be a DPS, right? So for the high substat priority, we're going to go for HP percentage and effect rest. Medium is going to be speed/defense. Now, why is speed not high? It's because at this point, we do have speed from our boots as well, and we probably have some speed line here and there. So having more HP percentage and effect rest is going to greatly help Fuxuan. Now moving on to the second last section, which is Fuxuan's Lightcone. Our credits to Edison Math Club for the spreadsheet math. He basically has done an excellent job compiling all the different thresholds, all the different findings for Fuxuan's Lightcone and see which one is really the best for Fuxuan, right? So huge thanks to Edison Math Club. Now back to the video at hand, you can see that CM players really like a signature Lightcone, but at the end of the day, it is not a must. I'll explain why later. Alternative substitutes are going to be Landau's Choice, Texture of Memories, as well as Moment of Victory. Although they are missing one over here, which is Day 1 of My Life, but I will be adding it to my video myself. Assuming the following 2 conditions, which I'm basically just translating whatever the work Edison Math Club has done over here, right? So assuming the following 2 conditions: 2 HP percentage main using Guard plus Longevous, no fleet. Talent 10 on both metrics, 6% max HP buff and 12% damage reduction, and 2 defense percentage subs. You can see over here, S1 moment of victory actually requires the least amount of HP subs for Fuxuan to survive. In fact, he's almost at half the HP requirement out of all the different Lightcones here. So that's very interesting to see, right? So we only need 7,000 HP and 1.9k defense, which I think should be pretty easy to do. Following this is actually not even our signature, it's going to be S5 Landau, and after S5 Landau is going to be S5 Day 1. So her signature Lightcone is actually ranked number 4 out of all these Lightcones. Why is this the case? Moment of Victory grants the most effective HP percentage due to defense percentage while still being on 2 HP percentage mains. Her signature Lightcone, she already shut her eyes, it has a highest demand for defense percentage subs or even defense percentage main to improve Fuxuan's maximum HP. Additional ERR also makes it easier to run HP or defense role, so if players want to take this to the next level, then that is something that you guys would do. Moment of Victory, like I mentioned just now, instead of having a very high demand for defense percentage, Moment of Victory has a high demand for HP percentage. In some way, it also increases Fuxuan's aggro, right? Because Moment of Victory, it does increase the unit's aggro. So eventually, this taunt value will give us benefit to Fuxuan as well, although this is not very measurable. Number 3, Texture of Memories. This greatly increases Fuxuan's personal survivability, but not so much for Fuxuan's team, right? There's a very, very good free-to-play options if you guys got it since day 1, so I wouldn't bother about any other Lightcones. But if you guys don't have this at all, meaning to say you haven't actually a single copy from Herta store, I would not recommend players to run Texture of Memories. The reasons being, our 4-star substitutes, Day 1 and Landau, they are both excellent and in fact do way more for our entire team instead of Fuxuan. Of course, if your Fuxuan is facing an issue where she can't even survive, then Texture of Memories is going to greatly help Fuxuan because of that. But for most players, especially if you guys already went through the proper team building, proper relic farming, then you shouldn't face any survival issues for Fuxuan. And then this brings me to my last thing, which is Landau's Choice in Day 1 of my life, right? Landau's Choice reduces the damage taken for Fuxuan, while Day 1 of my life reduces the damage taken for the entire team. So bottom line, do we pull for Fuxuan's Lightcone? I would say that you guys can pull a Fuxuan's Lightcone because it's very, very comfortable. It helps you play a DPS much easier, but there is absolutely no need to. There's no need to pull for her Lightcone as compared to Lightcones such as like Before Dawn or like Sile's in the Night. On top of this being not super impactful, we have a lot of good substitutes between the Preservation Lightcones itself, right? Supply and demand. Now finally, moving on to our last topic for the day is going to be team compositions. As with Luocha or any sustain units, Fuxuan can pretty much run with any team comp she wants, be it a solo sustain or even a duo sustain for difficult content such as Swarm Disaster or even MOC with an underdeveloped team. The most specialized team will be pairing Fuxuan with Silver Wolf by either bringing a Quantum DPS and an on-element support, or we can go with 2/2 Quantum/any element as seen from these combinations below, right? All these combinations, Jingliu with Pella, Tuopa with Asta, Blade with Bronya, Jingyuan with Tingyun, all these are excellent duo element team comps for Silver Wolf and Fuxuan. However, for players that do not have Silver Wolf, right, you guys don't want to have Silver Wolf and you guys still want to use her, that's absolutely doable as well. So here are the sample teams. Team with Silver Wolf with the 3 Quantum with 1 on-element support for Silver Wolf to mark the Quantum weakness, or we could honestly just run a standard DPS team with Fuxuan, Bronya, Pella and Jingyuan. This is looking to be very, very good. Fuxuan does help Jingyuan a lot by the CC immunity, so this can definitely be seen as well. And finally, we do have the duo element team with Fuxuan, Silver Wolf, Kimiko and Asta, right? So for this situation, against an enemy that's either weak to Quantum or weak to Fire, they are definitely going to be weak to the DPS that we want, which is going to be Himiko. Now, with that, we've come to the end of today's CN unit analysis. If you guys have any discussions or comments, feel free to leave them here or check out my Discord, Pokke's Village, where we have a very active community talking about Star Rail every single day. If you guys want to check out my stream, that's going to be twitch.tv/MrPokke. I'm streaming almost every single day now for MiHoYo's event, after which the schedule will be uploaded onto Discord itself, right? So that's all I have for today. All the best for Fuxuan pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.